Hello, my name is Akiwumi Jones. My group and I, which consist of Dulcanaris Garcia, Jessica Gonzalez, Sarah Barrett, and Yarieli Cabrera, have made an informative video on our topic, in what ways is gender inequality manifested in professional sports? For centuries, sports have served as a fun, competitive competition, entertaining for both spectators and players involved. As a result, sports serve to take our minds, distract us off of problems in society. But from time to time, and recently within the past few months, there's been real issues such as child abuse, domestic abuse, harassment cases that has sort of snuck its way into main topic of sports. This is known as paramount reality, which will be discussed later on in the video. In the world of sports, one does not have to look too far to see how it mimics the structure of society. In society, there are agent groups, dominant groups, and subordinate groups. This is the same for sports. Dominant groups being males, and not just any males, white rich males, which are specifically owners and some players. Subordinate groups, which consist of homosexual men, women, homosexual women as well, transgendered, and others. The subordinate groups suffer from race, class, stereotypes, and specifically gender inequalities, for example, the pay gap. This is due to patriarchy, the psychosocialization, and other sociological theories that will further be explained and discussed later on in the video.
There are other issues that involve us and men in the world of sports. These issues are gender pay gap, homosexual discrimination, and domestic violence abuse. There is a big wage gap between men and women in sports. Pay inequity in athletics has been an ongoing issue. Salaries for female athletes are low compared to men, as well as for the female coaches. The male coaches are getting 159% of the money that female coaches make. For example, head coaches for women's teams for the NCAA division get a typical salary of $850,400, whereas head coaches for men's teams receive $1,783,100. This is a big pay gap. The Nets Daily states that the Brooklyn Nets and Knicks City Dancers make little money for entertaining during NBA games. These cheerleaders will get $200 or less a game and have no benefits. They make this amount per game for all the stress and pressure they go through, while the lowest paid Nets player makes more than $500,000. In tennis, women get paid $157,800 less for her hard work. As stated by Morales in the Pro Tennis 2009 season, females earn 23.4% less than their male peers. Women could be allowed to play sports that men play if they were wearing clothing that attract the audience. An example of this is lingerie football. Women are underestimated and used for their beauty. Some stereotypical roles women take in the world of sports is of an interviewer. We now see more women partaking in the ESPN program, giving sports news, or in talk shows. This picture shows who are the owners of the NBA teams. All but 2 of the NBA owners from this list are white men. The other 2 is a white female and an African American male. Notice who are the ones that make up the NBA teams. These men are the ones who are in charge of any decision or any changes in the rules. Homosexual discrimination has become a dilemma recently. A few athletes, such as Jason Collins, have decided to communicate to everyone that they are gay. Jason Collins was the first openly gay athlete to reveal his sexual orientation through the Sports Illustrated magazine, and the first gay athlete to play in the NBA. Many people thought Collins was brave and inspiring for actually having the courage to do this. Michael Sam, a recently drafted football player, stated that he was gay in an interview with ESPN, and is the first openly gay NFL player. He was afraid that someone would leak out his secret before he actually announced it to the world. According to Sam, regardless of his sexual orientation, nothing that people say or do will distract him from the playing in the future games. He states that the only thing that should matter is that he is a true team player. Everyone in society should be accepted in the world of sports regardless of their race, gender, or sexual orientation. Another athlete that committed domestic violence abuse to his spouse was Jason Kidd. He abused his wife multiple times from 1996 to 2007. This is 11 years of a woman being physically abused by her husband. Both of these cases were taken to court, but nothing was done in order for the players to receive any kind of punishment from their coaches. All the years Jason Kidd was abusing his wife, he was still allowed to play for the Nets. His case became public in 2007, and he pleaded guilty in 2001. It seems as the owner, nor did the coach, think that Kidd did anything wrong since he kept playing all those seasons.
Throughout the world of sports, sexual harassment and abuse has been known as a recognized social problem. It is defined as an unwelcome or uninvited sexual behavior towards another individual, regardless of sex. It may include written, verbal abuse, sexual-oriented comments, to even physical conduct. Sexual harassment can occur anywhere, especially in a work environment that can become intimidating and offensive. For instance, a sexual relationship between coaches and athletes are regarded as an abuse of professional ethics, status, and power. Athletes are often drawn into keeping any form of sexual harassment as a secret in order to protect the team from public embarrassment. Coaches normally exercise power over athletes, whether it's by giving them praise, criticism, to even making recommendations that can further their athletic goals. In comparison to males and females, males are often reported as perpetrators than females. This is because women at times are underestimated about their performances at work and even as athletics, and are much more rather seen as sex objects than humans. For example, in the year of 2006, NBA coach Isaiah Thomas from the New York Knicks was accused to sexually harass former executive Anucha Brown Sanders, subjecting her to unwanted comments of verbal insults. At the time of the 3-week trial, Thomas did not have to pay any form of the punitive damages and decided for Brown Sanders to get fired from her year job and pay for the damages. Even though Brown Sanders was able to appeal the case, she wanted to send out a message to the people that she is a worker just like every working woman in America who gets up in the morning to work at a corporate environment. Many of these sex harassment cases in sports are treated less favorably because of the individual's gender identity, whether it's either they consider themselves a male, female, transgender, or bisexual. Without a doubt, sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination that violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In any of our social habits and behaviors is not taken into account, it can affect the cycle of socialization. This is because everything we see, say, or do can make up of whom we are and define our humanity. Everyone has the right to feel and be safe within their environment, regardless of your sex, and that's why it's important that we take prevention when sexual harassment is occurring. And most importantly, even as a women's athlete, there should be a demand for respect.
Patriarchy is the reason why sports are viewed as masculine, because males dominate the media, and therefore the media portrays masculinity from their perspective. Michael Kimmel discusses how the culture of lacrosse is fueled by class privilege and elite schools, because lacrosse is known as a high prestige sport. Usually males that get involved into these types of sports believe they can do anything and get away with it, and realistically they're right.
I know it's still preseason. You're kind of moving back to that 4 position tonight, but you said they're interchangeable. What's the approach?
See ball, get ball, same approach. It's pretty simple. You know how I do it, Tina.
All right.
All right, I'm just...
In the situation of Ray Rice, relating back to Bobby Harrow's article, this is known as the culture of entitlement, where patriarchy puts the focus on dominant groups and subjects the subordinate groups. In the world of sports, males are the agent group, and the target groups are women, homosexuals, and transgender individuals. This explains why males are portrayed more in sports as a way of being superior to these subordinate groups. And then those particular sports, such as basketball or football, whether they're being watched or whether men are playing these sports, are viewed as something masculine. Even though well over half of America supports same-sex marriages, young males still regard to homosexuality negatively, and they try their hardest to prove to their peers that they're real men. There has been recently a trend where athletes have been more comfortable in revealing their sexual orientation. However, transgender individuals still face restriction on eligibility due to their questionable gender. Why do inequalities in the world of sports exist? and how do these injustices affect me as an individual? We can observe the ways in which individuals are mistreated either because of their gender or their sexual preferences or even their decision of what sex category they want to be placed in. It's evident that many unethical actions by athletes and their aggressive conduct is justified by mainstream media and other forms of entertainment, such as NFL player Ray Rice, who was suspended indefinitely for brutally beating his fiancée in an elevator instead of being terminated from the National Football League entirely. American sociologist Michael Kimmel explains in his article, but where does this notion of being aggressive to demasculinity, come from? Bobby Harrow's article on the psychosocialization explains how we view oppression and how we differentiate from one another. But to explain these inequalities from this concept, when we're born, we grow to socialize with other individuals and environments that teach us and expose us to societal standards. And then we pass on those phrases such as boys don't cry and boys are only supposed to like girls. And it's a cycle that continues. Masculinity is portrayed as someone who is superior to women and homosexuals, and really that's just patriarchy. Masculinity is something socially constructed in which the knowledge and conceptions of one particular group becomes embedded into our institutions as normal.
Society is dominated by men, and it oppresses women to take the role they have socially attained. This clearly affects sports because people look at these social identities and stereotype women into not being able to perform as good as the men athletes in sports. Alan Johnson states, quote, even when they've been allowed to participate, it's generally been at a subordinate second-class level, quote. Unfortunately, gender is the barrier of the athletes in sports. A female performer can be a better athlete than a male athlete but cannot compete with men or be equally paid because of the gender barrier. In Night to His Day, Judith Lorber states, quote, gender is such a familiar part of daily life that it usually takes a deliberate disruption of our expectation of how women and men are supposed to act to pay attention to how it is produced. Quote, Judith Lorber hits a really good point with this statement, explaining to the reader that men and women are unequally looked upon to the extent that no attention is being paid to the real product. Meaning that if women do a better job than men, it is not looked at fairly based on gender. For example, in the Major League Baseball, men are the athletes who are candidates and drafted yearly. Women, they're not looked at as a candidate to play baseball in the major leagues. But there is a sport similar to baseball that women can play in schools, which is softball. But why don't they look at us as being capable of playing this kind of sports? When a woman finds her way into such positions, people tend to be struck by the exception to the rule and wonder how she'll measure up against a man in the same position. It's a test we rarely apply to men. Society, the voiced society, the one that have the power to be heard, make us, the voiceless people, believe that women will not do a great job in a male-dominated position. They don't think this, so they say it and people believe it. Changing the game. The role of social media in overcoming old media's attention's deficit towards women's sports by Dan Portia. Here in this research, they're looking at in what ways social media can help transcend the structural challenges that old media has placed on professional women's sports. What they find is that old media, which is, the TV and the radio, combined with the new media, which is the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, where us voiceless people have a medium to actually talk and form a community of communication about what we like, what we dislike, what things are going on that are affecting us.
Dear United States of America, girls who want to play sports with the boys and to be a role model for people, young and old. I throw 70 miles per hour. That's throwing like a girl. Sincerely, your daughter, Monet Davis.
Monet Davis is a pitcher for the Little League Baseball, one of 2 girls who played for 2014 Little League World Series and the first girl to earn a win and to pitch a shutout in Little League World Series history. Unlike the average pitcher in her age range, she throws 70 miles per hour, and the highest average range in her age is 50 miles per hour, and the lowest is 60 miles per hour. This strength she has defined it as a girl's strength. Monet Davis says this because of how destructive society and the media has been, that they don't really see the performances because they don't observe. They look at the inequalities. A lot of females can be equally successful at different sports, but they don't have the opportunity. Thankfully, Monet Davis have had the opportunity to show her ability, and they have used it to show the world that indeed girls and women can play good. And this is not a competition with men. This is just about change. And slowly but surely, we're definitely seeing some changes in the world. And I care because my daughter can be the next Monet Davis.